Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. It's Lane here with MetaShackle. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a couple of the XRP charts that I have, as well as looking into the ETH and Bitcoin charts a little, and the XRP versus ETH charts. So as you can see from the intro video that I did, that I tend to get a little bored sometimes, and being an artist, I tend to be rather creative. So it is kind of fun to do some things outside of the box, just add a little bit of creativity to my life. But let's not waste any more time and let's get into the video. If you would like to support my channel and support the work that I do here on YouTube and my other channels, an easy way to do that is by joining the Patreon. Simply use the coupon code MOON to get 33% off of the first month of your membership. This applies to all three tiers. So first off, we're going to take a look at the XRP chart, which incorporates my grafting charting techniques with my equilibrium zone, as well as my fib levels. Now we can see from the chart here that we had a 5-wave simple wave count moving up into this pattern. Now it looks like we have a 5-wave Elliott wave move potentially moving to the upside, which could take us up here into this area. And if we throw a couple fib levels on here just to kind of get a general idea of about where this could go, if it does that, it actually plays in very well to that general area. Price is currently trading above the equilibrium zone. We are creating an expanding, broadening wedge pattern here that I've been looking at more and more as time has gone by, and plays into a bigger overall pattern that I believe we are going to see moving forward. But I have not talked about that very much up to this point, but I may be getting into that a little bit more moving forward. Even though we have had this pullback today, the fact that we're trading above the equilibrium zone is a good sign. And I do believe at some point here, what we will end up seeing is the price moving up towards this upper trend line somewhere in the area of these Fibonacci's before seeing a major pullback. Now, taking a look at my XRP Cup Handle chart, I did somehow lose the chart that I was using previously, and I'm not exactly sure how that happened, whether it was erased or what the circumstances were, but I ended up having to create another one. So this one definitely varies a little bit from the one that I was looking at previously. But we are still trading within the handle area on this chart. On the other chart, I had a shadow line right in this area here, which still plays in very well to what we are currently seeing, representing the lower line of the handle. We do have quite a few different targets here to the downside that could be reached at some point, even coming down all the way to about that 70-cent mark. I'm not saying that price is going to come down there, but I do mark out these weak dojis regardless of their prices, because they often do come into play. But if you've followed my channel for any amount of time, you know that the one that I am watching is this weak doji reverse waterfall right here, resting at about $1.4740, which corresponds with the lower trend line on this expanding broadening wedge, as well as these lower Fibonacci levels right here. And I do believe at some point these levels are going to be hit again. We do have a bullish order block right here on the weekly, just below the current pattern, which supported price very nicely on this drop right here going back to June 22nd. The previous order block that we had right here has since been broken, but we have formed another bullish order block just below current price here. And as you can see, this fall that we've had today came right down into this bullish order block, nearly perfectly filling this bullish fair value gap right here on the daily, known as a BISI. And the current price action that we're seeing now is crowned with a bearish fair value gap known as a SIBI, also on the daily chart, which has acted as resistance numerous times. First acting as resistance here, rejecting price down to this lower level here. Price got rejected once again and has made numerous attempts to try and get back through this and failed time and time and time again. As it stands right now, this bearish SIBI is standing as our biggest obstacle to get through. But the good thing is, if we can get up through this with the power that this has demonstrated, instead of being resistance, once price is trading above it, will likely become support, helping to propel price up to these higher levels, which I believe we're going to see. Now, these lines here definitely mean something, but I won't cover it in this video today. I'll be going over that here soon in an upcoming video. Now, moving on to the Ethereum chart. This is the weekly chart. As many of you know, Ethereum has been on quite a tear lately. Ethereum has been trading within this nice wedge pattern for quite some time, with 2 points on the bottom, 2 points on the top, which we just recently broke through up above the upper trend line. Something that's important to know about Ethereum is it currently has a bullish embedded stochastic and has had this condition for 5 consecutive weeks. This is extremely bullish, and Ethereum will continue to be bullish as long as it is trading above the 80 on the stochastic. We do have these upper fib levels right here, which are a likely target. If we can break through this all-time high right here, resting at about that 4,879 level, we have already hit my target at 4,600, which was just below this weak doji waterfall on the weekly, which is sitting right here at 4,618.07. We also have this retracement level resting down here, which we could potentially revisit at some point once price loses the bullish embedded stochastic and starts to retrace to the downside. Now, one thing that we're definitely going to want to keep our eyes on is the XRP versus ETH charts, because typically when we look at these 4-year cycles in crypto, Bitcoin generally goes on an incredible run. Then money comes out of Bitcoin and goes into Ethereum, which then goes on a nice run. Then money comes out of Ethereum and spreads out throughout the altcoins, giving us a nice altcoin season. I've been saying for about a year now that this cycle was not going to be the same as what we've seen in the past, and that has already proven to be very true. But I believe instead of the standard 3-tier 4-year cycle that we usually see, that instead we are going to start seeing a 4-tier cycle, which will be money rolling into Bitcoin, going into Ethereum, then from Ethereum into XRP, then from XRP into the other altcoins. Because if you remember, when the Trump election pump occurred on November 5th, moving into December and January, XRP was leading the market, bar none. Many of the other cryptos had barely even budged by the time XRP had already made substantial gains. And I believe that this cycle is going to start to evolve rather than being the cycle we have seen previously. So that's something to watch out for. But now jumping over and taking a look at the Bitcoin chart, this is the weekly chart, we can see that price had basically been pushing up against this upper trend line for quite some time, has actually popped through and attempted to move higher, but has been stopped on 2 occasions. We had a very nice run yesterday, setting a new all-time high, which is fabulous. But price is now starting to fall below this upper trend line. We do have these upper Fibonacci levels with the 1.618 at about 136,218 all the way up to the 1.786 at about 147,485. I still think it's very likely that we're going to see these levels hit, but at the same time, this rising wedge is very concerning to me because this is a bearish chart pattern. And even though things are not looking that great with fiat currencies around the world, and people are basically trying to flee them in an attempt to protect or preserve their capital, Bitcoin being one of the primary beneficiaries of this, as it's a non-inflationary asset having a fixed amount, unlike fiat currencies that are all printed into oblivion, and of which every single fiat currency that has ever existed in the history of mankind, they have all failed. But this pattern here concerns me greatly. I think at the very least we're going to see a pretty decent pullback at some point that's going to bring price down to right around the area of this weak Doji Echo waterfall on the weekly chart, which is sitting at 96,409 currently. even if it doesn't quite get down to this, I think we will hit this lower trend line. And if it breaks through here, the first support zone that you would want to be watching for would be this bullish fair value gap in the form of a BISI on the weekly, which is starting at about that 92,800 level. But these rising wedges, no matter how you chop it up and how you look at it, play bearish the vast majority of the time. So this is definitely something to think about. Now moving on to the XRP versus Ethereum chart. Currently, I think this is the most important chart to be watching, especially if you're an XRP holder or if you're someone that's looking for the non-Ethereum part of the altcoin season to begin. We had a weak doji waterfall on the 3-month right here, which was filled nearly perfectly on April 7th, which swept the previous high right here. The lower side of the chart had already swept the previous low right here before moving to the upside to where we were currently trading at the time that we filled this weak doji. We have a bearish fair value gap in the form of a SIBI on the weekly chart right here, which has now rejected price for the first time, pushing it to the downside, which means that price is favoring Ethereum over XRP. We do have two clear targets right here on the chart. The first in the form of a weak doji waterfall on the 3-month chart, which is resting here at 302969. We also have a second potential target in the form of a weak doji reverse waterfall on the weekly chart down here at 302162, both of which are currently trading within a bullish fair value gap known as a BISI on the weekly chart. And from where we are currently trading, getting down to this area represents a 50% decrease in price just to get to the top of that bullish fair value gap. Another thing that's important to look at is the fact that right here on the charts, we have what's known as a bearish embedded stochastic. The red line represents where it started. The green line represents that it was confirmed, and we're now trading on the 10th consecutive week of the XRP versus Ethereum chart displaying this bearish embedded stochastic condition. This chart remains bearish until this bearish embedded stochastic condition is lost, which would essentially be price trading above 21 on the stochastic for 2 consecutive weeks. The first week gives it the potential to lose it. The second week would be the confirmation. So if price trades above 21 for 1 week, but then falls back below 20, it does not lose this bearish embedded stochastic condition. But if it trades above 21 and does not regain 20 within the following week, then it does in fact lose this bearish condition. But the great thing about this chart is we can keep an eye on this for the reversal point, because odds are when price finally bottoms, which is likely to occur somewhere around either one of these targets, it's not guaranteed, but it's what I'll be watching for. When we see the reversal on this chart moving up, that will be XRP starting to appreciate against Ethereum, which could potentially tip us off to the next leg of the altcoin season, which, as I mentioned earlier, I believe is going to be a 4-tier season moving forward, which, instead of lumping XRP with all of the other altcoins, I believe we're going to see XRP separated from it now, with money going from Bitcoin to Ethereum to XRP, then coming out of XRP and spreading out between the other altcoins, essentially changing this cycle from a 3-tier cycle to a 4-tier cycle instead, with XRP becoming more and more important and putting more and more pressure on Ethereum and Bitcoin every day as we continue to move into the era of utility and move away from this era of speculation that we have been in for the last decade. We are now transitioning into the time where these technologies are going to be used for their intended purpose rather than just being purchased for mere speculation. And in regards of XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, XRP has more utility than either of the other two. And I personally believe that it's going to be much more valuable moving forward compared to the other two, even though it may not reach the prices that even Ethereum has reached because of the way they're structured. But on a utility basis, XRP is something that you use every day. Ethereum has much more utility than Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, in my opinion, is basically just a digital pet rock, serves no purpose, and it certainly is not going to be used as a medium of exchange on a wide level because it's too slow, it's too expensive, and it's just not built to be used on a level to where, for example, it could become the world reserve currency. It's just never going to happen. But it will be used likely for private transactions moving forward, perhaps even some commercial transactions. But in terms of widespread adoption, the only cryptocurrency that I can see that even has the potential to become a de facto world reserve currency is XRP. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Good luck and have a great day.